The Red Death had long devastated the country. No pestilence had ever been so fatal or so hideous. Blood was its avatar and its seal, the redness and the horror of blood. But the Prince Prospero was happy, dauntless and sagacious, so retired to the deep seclusion of one of his castellated abbeys. Prospero. There were many who would have thought him mad, but his followers felt that he was not, and for them he organized a masked ball of the most unusual magnificence. There was much of the beautiful and some of the bizarre. There was music, and the abbey was amply provisioned. The outside world would take care of itself. But in a dark corner of the great hall stood a gigantic clock of ebony. Its pendulum swung with a dull, monotonous clang, and for as long as it sounded, nobody made a move. But as the last chime faded, the revelers again broke out in dance, and so the feast carried on into the night. But freezing each hour as the clock sounded. Until there commenced the sounding of midnight upon the clock. Only this time it had 12 gongs to go through. And thus it happened that there were many individuals who had become aware of the presence of a masked figure. The figure was tall and gowned, and shrouded from head to toe in the habiliments of the grave. And with a slow and determined movement, it began to make its way to the prince. Who dares? Demanded Prospero. But the figure remained silent and responded in a quite different manner. And in death fell Prince Prospero. Now they knew. Red Death had come like a thief in the night, and one by one dropped the revelers in the blood-bedewed halls of their revel, each in the despairing posture of his fall. And darkness and decay and the Red Death held illimitable dominion over all.
Hello guys, and welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your really long vocabulary review last time, and I hope you enjoyed that video, and I hope now you have maybe a mental picture of what this story is like. If you're having a hard time understanding this story, you can go to YouTube and just type in The Masque of Red Death. And there is a movie that was made a long time ago that you can download and watch with English subtitles. And there's also many short clips, like the one we just saw, that I think will help you get an image of this movie. So with that said, of this story. So with that said, let's start our review of the story and then continue from there. Alright, so first in the story, immediately we know that the Red Death had long devastated the country. So a disease is killing all the people. You should know this. I think you should understand this instantly. We have a disease, and it is killing the people. So next, I hope everybody understands that there is a prince. And he seems to be kind of a happy prince, and he stays in his palace in solitude. So this means the prince is alone. Now we know he's not alone, right? He does have followers. He has his friends there and people who support him there. But he is not in the country. He's not there. He's staying at home. Not at home. He's staying in his palace by himself. Not by himself, with his friends, but not among the countrymen. Just him and his friends in his palace. So, next we know he enjoys what we learned in our vocabulary is a voluptuous lifestyle. Right? He has parties. This is fun. This is a nice time. They sing and dance. So his life is what you would probably consider a very good life. But we have this weird, not weird, maybe almost scary type thing. Every hour an ebony clock rings. So every hour you have a clock that chimes. Ding dong, ding dong. And we know when this clock rings, the party stops. There's no more fun, and everybody listens. So we have in this beautiful palace with these 7 rooms and all these parties and fun. When the clock rings, the fun stops. So every hour an ebony or black clock rings. And then we know at midnight a masked man appears. So a man who's not part of the party is there after the clock rings. And everybody dies, including the prince. So this is our basic outline of the story. We have a disease, a prince who leaves the country and goes into solitude in his palace. He has parties, but every hour this clock chimes. At midnight, a man wearing a mask comes, and next, everybody dies. So let's look at our setting for a minute. I think in this story, our setting is extremely important. So our setting, right, is an elaborate, fancy, bling bling, shiny, very nice palace and a castle. So the palace has 7 rooms, and each room is a different color. And all the rooms are full of luxury. This is not a little house. This is a beautiful, big, elaborate palace that's fit for a king. In this case, a prince. However, one room in this palace is black. I think this is important. And it contains a black clock. And the windows are the color of blood. So in this big, beautiful palace, with all of this luxury and style, we have this one room that's not right. This room is not luxurious. It's not pretty. It's not good. So I have one room that is particularly not fancy. It's a room where you don't want to go. Okay. So in our setting, remember it's not just where, but also the atmosphere. So what are the people doing? Right? Is it happy, sad? So our atmosphere is a happy one. People are masquerading. Right? It means wearing masks, having a mask party, and having a merry, jolly time. Right? These people are having fun. So our atmosphere is one of luxury, fancy, happy times. But when the clock chimes, the merrymaking stops. So you have just a moment every hour when the music stops, and for some reason, it's not happy, just for a moment. Then it goes on, and everybody is happy again. So our setting is in a fancy palace, and our atmosphere is one of luxury and happiness, except when the clock chimes, when the clock rings. So let's take a look at maybe what our setting is like. I think this is very important. This is kind of my idea, perhaps, of a big, beautiful palace that a prince would have. And you have these people masquerading. So these pictures are examples of a masquerade, a mask party. And I think perhaps his palace looks like this. So we have a big, grand, beautiful setting. But we never forget that on the outside, in the real world, there's a disease and the people are dying. So we may have two settings, but our main setting is in this beautiful, beautiful palace. Also, in our setting, we have this clock. I think this is not a good picture of the clock I had in my brain. I was thinking of a bigger clock that's more scary, maybe kind of a gothic clock. But when I looked for pictures of clocks that were black and big, this is about the best I could do. So don't forget, in all this happiness, we have this one thing that will stop the party. All right, now let's look at our plot. And we've already looked at our plot once. So we have disease. Then we have seclusion. Then happy times. Then a masked man. Then death. All right, so what is our introduction, rising action, climax, and conclusion? So our introduction, I think, is easy to understand. In the first page, he says, the Red Death had long devastated the country. No pestilence had ever been so fatal or so hideous. Blood was its avatar and its seal, the redness and the horror of blood. The scarlet stains upon the body, and especially upon the open face of the victim, da-da-da-da-da. He goes on to say, and the whole seizure, which means kind of sickness, progress, rising action, and termination, finished, of the disease were the incidents of half an hour. So in 30 minutes, you die. I think we have a very powerful introduction. Okay. And then we know in our introduction also, there's a happy prince in his palace who is not part of this disease. So maybe this is a little of our rising action. We have parties. We're rising in our action. We have the clock that's ringing. Then we have a climax, right? The top point, where the clock strikes at midnight and a man appears. A masked man. And the prince becomes angry. Right? He says, "Who are you?" And the masked man kills the prince, and he kills the people, and that is our conclusion. So we have disease and happiness, a clock chiming, a masked man, death, and the Red Death has everything. So this is our plot. And our conflict. Now in this story, the conflict is maybe a little difficult to identify. It's not the same as an action story per se. It's certainly not the same kind of conflict you often find in movies and stories. So what is it? Let's look at our conflict. It's not easy to see. I think the conflict is the prince and his followers versus the disease. So we could say he wants to escape the disease, and he tries to escape the disease. In this story, he's in his palace, he doesn't want to come out, he's happy, but in the end, we see him fight the disease. The disease is the masked man, and lose. So I think our conflict is Prince and his friends versus the pestilence, versus the disease. All right, so what type of conflict is this? Well, it's external. We know the prince is happy. There's no fight in his brain. And it's a man versus circumstance. Right? If a disease is coming across a nation, that is a circumstance. Now in the end, maybe we could say it's man versus man, but I don't think so. This is an external, it means outside of your brain, man versus circumstance conflict. And our character. So we have one main character, right? Prince Prospero. He is a static character. He does not change. So this is our main character, really almost our only character, is the prince. So don't forget, in character, we don't just ask who, we ask what is he like? What is his personality? Is he nice? Is he mean? Well, he is a dictator. If you don't know the word dictator, please pause the video and look that up. It means he is a tyrant. He is a king. Right? Kim Jong-il is a dictator. Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin were dictators. And he displays the typical traits of a dictator. I mean, if you study history or if you turn on the news, he seems like a normal dictator. He doesn't care and he enjoys sensual pleasure. In other words, his people are dying, he's in the castle. He's having a nice, sensual life. At the same time, his people are dying. And let's look at some quotes from the book. This print is a little bit small. Let me zoom in on this so you can see. Okay, so a few quotes. Right? When the masked man, the Red Death, comes in, he says, "Who dares?" he demanded. "Seize him and unmask him." So this is a characteristic of a dictator. He is angry. He has power. And then next, Poe, the author, tells us, the prince had provided all the appliances of pleasure, which means fun things, happy things. So he seems to me like a dictator. So that would be our character. Right? You have a feeling that this guy is a little weird, a little strange. Maybe you don't like him. All right, so our point of view, again, let me zoom in on this, is third person. I suppose says he said, she said, da-da-da, with first person narration. So narration is when the person telling the story comments about the story. And he tells us in the story, such as I have painted. but let me first tell of the rooms. So, we're seeing it through Poe's eyes. Perhaps you've seen the movie Shawshank Redemption, where the man is in jail, he's in prison, and the old black man is telling the story. Well, he tells the story, he said, she said, but we know it's through his eyes. So this is narration. Poe is narrating the story. He said, I will tell you about the palace. Good. All right, our theme. This one may be a little difficult to point down, but I don't think so. Right? I think the theme is no one escapes death. Notice I have no one in italics on here because here we are dealing with a prince, right? A wealthy, rich prince who has his own palace, and yet he dies. Or maybe a theme would be money cannot buy safety. He is in solitude or isolation. He is not with the disease, yet the disease wins. Or maybe another theme could be that nature will beat a man. Right? Or nature can beat a palace or walls. So I think our theme here is definitely death. Right? He cannot escape the death. It doesn't matter if he's a prince. It doesn't matter. He will die. And all of his friends die as well. So I think that is probably our theme. Right, so let's review our story. First, let's zoom in on this again. First, our setting is a grand palace with a grand party. And this word grand, right, means very beautiful, very nice, very big. But there's trouble outside, the disease. And we also know there's trouble inside. Right? There's this annoying clock. All right, our conflict in this is the prince versus nature, or the prince versus the disease. This is our conflict. For our character, we have a stereotypical dictator, indulgent, apathetic, and pompous. So indulgent, right, means he has big parties. Probably he drinks liquor. He's having a nice time. Apathetic means I don't care. His people are dying and he does not care. And pompous, right, I think. And so pompous means I'm better than you. I'm the best. I'm the greatest. So I think that is our character. Our point of view, as it is third person with narration. Right? So Poe tells you, I will tell you about the rooms. I will tell you about the palace. So this is our point of view. And our theme, finally. I think we all must die. Wealth does not let you escape. Time will kill you, I think is probably our theme. Alright, so this is our story. And that is all for the story time. So next time, we're going to ask, what is Poe's art of the short story? What does he do to make the story good? And in your pictures, here, I have given you some hints as to what I think Poe's art of the short story is. To give you a hint, I think the middle picture is personification. I think the lotus is a symbol and I think the Masque woman is part of the setting. So if you have not yet, look up personification and symbolism. We will talk about those next time. We are done for now. Thank you, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.